This lecture is brought to you by the Jerusalem Sober House. The Jerusalem Sober House is a structured sober living facility located in the heart of Jerusalem, Israel. For more information on the Jerusalem Sober House and the services we provide, please visit us online at www.jerusalemsoberhouse.com. We hope you enjoy this lecture.
Hello, everyone. My name is Batya Yaniger. I'm a certified logotherapist and also social worker in Israel. I counsel people, I supervise, and I teach logotherapy. I got into this field several years ago because I felt that logotherapy was a very Jewish approach. The more that I studied it, the more I became convinced of that. And I want to talk to you today about logotherapy, which I'll give you an introduction to shortly. And I want to introduce a model for understanding meaning, the concept of meaning. Because what you think of when you think of meaning is this picture very often. You think of somebody where meaning is in one direction and the cheese and crackers are in the other, and you want to know which one you should choose, which way should you go. So the question is, do we need meaning? And the people who are involved with positive psychology have gotten very interested in this question in recent years. They want to know what's the comparison or correlation between meaning and happiness. And they found that Roy Baumeister has done a lot of research in this area from Stanford University. They found that satisfaction is not a reliable measure of meaning. People can be happy, but they say they're happy, but they don't find their life to be meaningful. Whereas even in sickness, people find meaning. Another aspect is they think about the here and now, as opposed to being connected to past, present, and future. And their life feels like they're living within some kind of context. There are deeper social connections when people have meaning. And they find meaning despite high stress. Sometimes people live stressful lives, just like they live lives that are not in the best of health. And finally, the difference between getting what you want or purpose in life, which relates to the concept of past, present, and future. They're living and looking forward to some kind of purpose, and that makes meaning very, very important in people's lives. And in fact, another study shows that altruism boosts immunity. So it's not as if you have a choice between, do you want to be a healthy person or do you want to be a good person? Really, it turns out that when you're a good person, however you define it, that makes you healthy. Mm-hmm. And so inescapably, we find that the realms are overlapping.
Quick question, is that going to be on the handout?
No, but I can send it to you when you put your email address down. Yeah. Oh, in fact, on one of the handouts, there's a link to the articles that talk about this. So you can look that up. Okay. So Dr. Viktor Frankl, who founded logotherapy, he said it's not enough for happiness to be the goal, because you need a reason to be happy. So in a nutshell, that's what meaning means. It's a reason to be happy. And what we'll do today is I'll give you a background to logotherapy. I'll show you the model that I've thought of, and I'll illustrate it through a case study. Okay, the kinds of questions we ask when we're looking for meaning are like, who am I? What am I doing here? Where am I going? And when we get lost in that puzzle, of life, in those places that we're looking for, we feel an existential vacuum. This is a picture I drew there. And we try to fill the vacuum with other things. And when we fill it with addictions and excess and violence, that's what people do when they're trying to fill the vacuum. So logotherapy always looks back to the origins of any pathology, not necessarily the origin of the pathology, but what's underlying it, underlying everything, no matter what the problem is people are looking for meaning. Now, despite all of this, Frankl has been largely discredited or ignored by the psychological community. I have to say this because there's a book books have been written about meaning. New books come out about meaning, and all the logotherapists on the Facebook page, Logotherapy Facebook page, are saying, why isn't Frankl mentioned here, or why is he mentioned only briefly? And there's a book, The Theory and Practice of Group Psychotherapy by Irvin Yalom, where he has a statement there that just threw me incredibly. He says, they tried to ignore existential factors, like the importance of compassion and finding purpose in life and so forth, but they found that they really couldn't ignore it, and he said that existential factors play an important but largely unrecognized role in psychotherapy. And he adds, there is no discrete school of existential psychotherapy, no single accepted body of existential theory and techniques. Excuse me, that's what logotherapy is. But the answer to the question of why he says that, I think you could find a couple of pages before that, where he talks about the search for meaning. And our search, despite being unfortunate enough to be thrown into a universe without intrinsic meaning. So this is the difference. Okay? So here's, first of all, Dr. Viktor Frankl. I didn't introduce him yet. A psychiatrist, neurologist, and Holocaust survivor who was a contemporary of Freud and Adler. And I'll talk more about his system in a minute. But I just want to mention, okay, I did things a little bit out of order here. First of all, the three tenets. I'll come back to the answer to the question in a minute about Yalom and the existentialists. But the three tenets of logotherapy are that life is intrinsically meaningful. Excuse me, at this point, I will hand out the handouts. Okay, and in the handout, this first handout is an outline of what I'm going to do today. So you'll be able to follow it as I speak.
It's very interesting you're talking about the meaning and in Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, on the 12-step groups, one of the things you hear a lot in the meetings is that, I had this God-shaped hole inside. I was trying to fill it.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly it. Yeah. So first of all, that life is intrinsically meaningful. That's the first tenet. Secondly, that we are free to seek and find that meaning. Like, we have the ability within us to do it. And third, that we are highly motivated to do it. So those are the three tenets that everything is based on. Now I get to the answer to Yalom and the existentialists. The basic difference between the existential psychotherapists who base themselves on the secular existential philosophers, and I emphasize the secular existential philosophers, is that life is intrinsically meaningless. So that the implications of this for therapy, or for helping people generally, is that what are you doing? You're looking for something that's really meaningless. Like, even when you find the meaning, it's a meaning that you've fabricated. So how meaningful can it be? It's you're looking for people to help people cope with something that's intrinsically meaningless to begin with. Whereas Frankl says life is intrinsically meaningful, and what you're doing is you're helping people find what the meaning is. And you don't always find it, but just knowing that it's there, just knowing that there has to be some kind of purpose to my existence makes a big difference to people. And you can spend a lot of time looking for it, and that's okay. Yeah.
If you have a very philosophically
oriented person.
A client,
Yes.
and they say to you, I just hold life is intrinsically meaningless. can you still work with kind of logotherapy techniques?
Yeah, you can still work with them, and that's exactly why I thought of this model, because I wanted to find a model that would work also for people who are not philosophically oriented. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. Okay. Although my client was a little bit, but that's okay. Okay. So the view of life, and its challenges, therefore, in logotherapy is very different. It's a view that says life, anytime you have a problem or an issue or a struggle, life is actually provoking you. And that's why it's very easy to see the affinity with Judaism, that God is speaking to you through what's happening. That's basically what it's about. So when you look at that, you say, well, what is my whole life about? What is this particular challenge coming to me to teach me? And instead of saying, let's just get over this, get rid of this, it's allowing you to feel negative emotions, to feel the angst of what you're going through, and the distress, and to say, this also has some kind of purpose to it, and some kind of reason for it, and something I'm supposed to do with it. So Frankl, an important quote of Frankl is, what is demanded of man is not, as some existential philosophers teach, to endure the meaninglessness of life, but rather to bear his incapacity to grasp its unconditional meaning in rational terms. Right? Logos is deeper than logic. Right? Logos means meaning, and that's the word that Frankl used to make his system logotherapy, based on that. And it's not irrational. And he says it's deeper than logic. It means it's not irrational, but it's not rational. It's something deeper than that. It's something you have to go down to the soul level, and then you find out something that you sense on a gut level. And logotherapy is not just for suffering, right? It's not just for people who are suffering. It's also for people who are bored, for people who are, fed up with life, or in a crossroads. They don't know where they're going. They don't know who they are. People can seem successful and still feel that there's no point to their existence. So the meaning is something that's needed throughout. So that idea of life itself is provoking you and bring you to your authentic self relates to the first tenet, that life is intrinsically meaningful. The view of a person, how a person is someone who has the ability to reflect on his life and mindfully respond to it, and not just react, to be accountable for his actions, to take a role in what's happening. These are the capacities that a person has that relates to the second two tenets, which is the freedom of will, because you have the freedom to reflect and to do all of that. And you also have the will to meaning. You have an interest, a motivation. That's what moves you and energizes you. So the fact that a person has within him this healthy core, that's the view of a person, and that's what allows logotherapy to work.
I have a question.
Okay, before you ask me anything, I want to save the questions for the end, unless you really need to get clarity, because I'm afraid I won't get through everything.
Well, I've just got this thought running through my head.
Yeah.
It's not stopping me from.
Okay.
I'm wondering, how many logotherapists are also addiction counselors?
I don't know, but
I mean, because I'm seeing
clarify that.
so many parallels between the 12-step approach and logotherapy.
Yeah. Well, there is someone who wrote for her logotherapy project a conversation between what was the name of the person who started the 12-step
Bill W. or Dr. Brown?
program? What?
Bill W. Bill Wilson and Bob
Bill
Smith.
Wilson. Yeah. So like an imaginary conversation between Bill Wilson and Viktor Frankl. So she wrote that for her project. But I don't know the answer to that. So what is unique about logotherapy even though it's a very intuitive approach, there's a framework. There's a therapeutic framework, a skill set, and a vocabulary for meaningful and authentic living. And that's why it's something that, even though it's intuitive, it's still worth studying, and you gain a lot of skills, first of all, through applying it to your own life, and secondly, through helping others. Now that I've introduced logotherapy, I want to introduce the model to you. I'm going to talk about I'm going to present to you 4 different aspects of meaning, 4 different ways to define meaning in a practical way, and how they're expressed, the interventions, and the meaningful features. And I adapted the exegetical approach to Torah study of Pshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod to describe these 4 levels. Right, so at this point I'll hand out another sheet where you'll see a chart with all of those. I'm going to talk about the first 2 aspects today and the second 2 aspects next week. So 2 of them are left blank in the meantime. Okay, you don't need that, you have it on your page. Okay, so what's the pshat? Okay, the pshat is the facts, right? Just like when you're learning, there's the simple meaning that it is what you see. You know, what you see, you get. I had a client once who said she felt this person was, a certain person that she would run across was a monster. You know, she tried to always ignore her and like walk the other way. And she, it hit her at one point that this person is maybe thinking that she's a monster. You know, like she got to a place, you know, she also felt very uncomfortable sitting at the house of someone where there was a child there who was looking at her, you know, and so her insecurities caused her to perceive the world in a certain way. And that's what we all do. We have certain things that trigger us. We have assumptions and projections and misperceptions and false beliefs, you know, and all of these things don't allow us to see reality as it is. And sometimes we don't even see the reality of our own emotions because we're trying to run away from it because it's too uncomfortable, it's too hard to handle. And it's very well known that we repress emotions and then it comes out physically, very often in illness, because it has to go somewhere and it has nowhere to go. And so the first aspect of meaning is just to recognize that and to try to remove those blocks, to recognize the importance of just seeing things as they are. To see the person who's talking to you, to really hear what he's saying. For example, even if you want to have empathy for another person, and you're very often, I'm sure you've experienced this, where you're telling another person about a problem you're having, and they're really thinking about how they would feel if they were you, you know, but they're not actually getting into your shoes and seeing it from your perspective. So that's why it's it's very important, but it's not so easy to do. You wanted to say something?
Reality therapy. That first part.
The first part, yeah.
It's reality.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of these things do overlap, as I said, because it's very intuitive anyway. You know, but I'm sure you'll see that there's something different as well. You hear the message. See, Frankl emphasized the idea of hearing a certain message when you see things as well, because it's giving you a message. This person is in need, or I'm meant to say no to this. I'm meant to say yes to this. It's giving you a message that you need to hear it. So Frankl, so how is it expressed? You know, by paying attention and having an accurate assessment of what you see. And Frankl brought an illustration to explain this, where he was at a lecture, and it was a theologian who was his assistant, who was handing him the questions that were given to him by the audience. And he looks at this one question and he says, no, this question is nonsense, and never mind. And Frankl says, what does it say? He said he wants to know what, 600 means in your theory of existence. And Frankl said, wait, let me see it. And it can't be that that's what he says. And he looks at it and he says, no, it says he wants to know what God, what God is in your theory. So Frankl wanted to use this to make the point that that there is an objective meaning there. We just don't always read it. But it was an unintentional projective test because this theologian, presumably because he was trying to stay away from religious topics in a context of therapy, which religious people very often do, want to avoid, right? Because they're afraid of imposing, something religious into the therapy, which you do have to be careful not to impose your own values, which we'll talk about later. But I think that because of that, he misread what it said in the paper. And so Frankl says, just like you wouldn't say that this question that was asked was, ink randomly sprinkled on the page, and you can read it however you like. He said, also in life, you have to read things however you like. You have to read things according to what they are, and not however you like. And then the question that you can ask, of course, is how do you know? That's the big question that everybody asks. How do you know that you're reading it correctly? And this question always bothered me because what is the alternative? Are you going to run to someone else all the time to ask them to read it correctly? The fact is that you need to develop that. You need to have humility, first of all, to know that you can't be 100% sure of yourself all the time. So Frankl said you have to be half sure and wholehearted. To go wholeheartedly into what you're doing the best you can because you're doing the best you can. Because you're doing the best you can to remove the blocks to perception, and you're doing the best you can to, from a humble stance to try to really see, what it's about. To ask the other person to clarify, so that you get it right. And this only works if you have confidence in your client that they are capable of doing that. That every person is capable of looking for the meaning in their particular life. So with that, we'll go on to the case. And with this case study, I'm going to hand out, pass it around. Hey, actually, I need one. Okay. This is a case that through this, I'm going to illustrate the 4 types of meaning. Okay, this is a woman who has Meniere's disease and tinnitus ringing in her ears, and she gets nauseous, and she has a lot of trouble functioning generally. She'll just see a book lying sideways on the shelf, and it causes her to become dizzy, and she practically felt like she couldn't cook, she couldn't work anymore. She felt like she couldn't do anything with her life. She just did something a little bit. She wouldn't feel well. She'd sit at the Shabbat table. Sometimes her family would have to carry her back to bed. So she was not a very happy person, and she did a lot of things also, medically to help herself. Right, so she turns on a fan so there's noise so she doesn't hear the ringing in her ears, and she did everything that she could, but her condition was worsening, and she felt like she was having trouble at this point to continue that way. So I want to ask 2 people to, one person will be A, I'm calling her Amy. One person will be the the client, one person will be the therapist. The two of you want to do it? Okay, who do you want to be? Want to be the therapist?
Why don't I roll quick, sorry.
You want to be?
I'll do the thing.
You'll be the therapist, and you'll be Amy? Okay, great. Okay, so A is for Amy, so that's the client, so you can read when you see that, that's you.
I ask myself, what can I do when I can't do anything? Depression is a little gremlin that wants to be skeptical about everything. Why am I bothering with this course and taking exams? I'm not going to do anything with it.
I sensed at the end of the last meeting that even though you've done some amazingly courageous things like getting yourself to take this course while you're feeling so sick and learning to keep going for the sake of your family, something about it is just not quite good enough. It's not enough of a reason to go on.
That's true.
Wait, I want to stop here. We'll continue, but I don't want to stop here. Okay, so the first stage is the assessment of distress. And actually in any therapy, you're assessing the distress of the person. You can see that she's hyper-reflecting, and not to blame her because her situation is severe, but it's hard for her to ignore it anymore, and she's really, busy thinking a lot about it, and that's adding to her depression. On a spiritual plane, also, she feels like her belief system is not, we'll see this more, but she feels like her belief system is not serving her anymore. And so that's another point. Basically, she feels two things. She feels she's worthless because she can't work, and she said her work defines her. You put those two things together, you see her work defines her. She's not working, so she's worthless. And secondly, she feels meaning is a pretense. And we'll see that also. This is the two kinds of two sources of distress. The reason they are sources of distress for her because they're misperceptions. So in the assessment stage, you want to see what misperceptions does this person have, perhaps, and that's not there yet. Okay, what misperceptions does the person have? And what is their meaning crisis? So her meaning crisis is that she can't continue like this without a reason to go on. What we said about how meaning gives you a reason to be happy. So she needs some, even if you don't call it happiness, but being at peace, having a little more of a sense of well-being, she needs some kind of reason to go on. And so she needs to hear, so to get back to what we said about Pshat, she sees the situation as it is. She's not ignoring it, right? But these misperceptions about what message it's giving her is the problem, right? In other words, seeing it through a victim mentality, like I'm a victim, this is happening to me, this is terrible, this is just horrible, and my life therefore is meaningless, right? So the therefore is the misperception of the pshat, of what her situation is. And if we can bring her to a better place of seeing the reality in a different way, hearing a different kind of message coming through it, right, then she can be in a better place. 1 second. So she said, to give you a couple of examples, I didn't write everything on the page. So to give you a couple of examples of things she said, meaning is a booby prize. So this is why I say this is a misperception that she has. She says, to keep you from jumping off a bridge. It's like, there is really no such thing as meaning. But the odd thing was that at the same time that she's saying that meaning is a pretense and there really is no meaning to her life, she wants to find out how to believe the lie. We'll see that in a little while also, right? So you see the contradiction in terms. Like, I realize that in order to deal with my life in a better way, I have to find my life meaningful, but it's really a lie. And so you notice like the existential philosophers, right? It's really a lie. So like teach me how to believe in the lie. That's my job that she's giving me. I should teach her how to believe in the lie. So what would you do if someone said that to you? I'll mention also that Dr. Stephen Southwick, who's a logotherapist who helps war veterans in America, he made an expression called post-traumatic growth. And he said that he tells people, you're experts. Look, and you can tell this to any client. You're experts. You're an expert in being rejected by society. You're an expert at not knowing how to talk to people. Whatever it is. Okay, so how can you use your expertise? Right? You're assuming that there's something there, and that's the meaning. Okay, meaning is not something esoteric. He's saying there's something about your unique set of toolbox and the combination of it that you can use. And they think it's like totally useless. Like, what can I do with this? And it turns out that they go to places where they do help people because the other person understands that they understand them, right? And they make a match like that. So to challenge her belief, okay, so one second. The empathy that I needed to give her had to be in a way of not causing her more worry. Because what happens, I'm sure you're aware, but Frankl calls this Etrogenic Damage, that the therapist can cause even more damage by emphasizing the problem, by catastrophizing it, and then the person is already obsessing over it, and they'll obsess over it even more. So there has to be a gentle kind of acceptance, while at the same time not being overly dramatic about it, right? Doctors do that all the time, medical doctors. We want to be a little more empathetic than they are sometimes, but we could learn something from the way they're like.
Well, couldn't you even say that Freud was doing that also all the time?
Yeah.
He was like really putting a negation on it. He was emphasizing every problem.
Right. Yeah, that's right. So that's why we'll get to de-reflection and we'll talk about that. Yeah. Okay. And I was truly invested in helping her. Here's something that is not a skill exactly, but I've been personally to both kinds of therapists where the empathy is genuine and where it's not. That's something that the client will pick up, and that's something that only depends on your sincerity. So it's like, no amount of Rogerian training or logotherapy training will help you. You just have to really believe in the person, and you have to feel for them and imagine yourself in their shoes. And I noticed also her healthy core, which as I said, that logotherapy emphasizes the healthy core of the person. So the healthy core that said one day, what can I do when I can't do anything? Am I going to just spend my whole life in bed? Because I can't work, what am I going to do with my life? This is it. And she pulled herself out of bed and said, I'm going to take a course. So sometimes people do things, but they don't appreciate their own courage. They don't appreciate their own, the importance of what they did. And one of the things that we do is to spell it out, to highlight it, to help the person hear themselves. Not because you're just reflecting back, but because you want them to hear themselves and to hear what was that like? What a great act that was, that you were able to pull yourself out of bed. So I appreciated her healthy core that could do that. Her healthy core that said, I have to be careful to avoid stress because I know that that makes my condition worse. So she's taking care of herself. And she wants to make her family proud of herself. She doesn't want to be miskena. And all these things show that she has a lot of strengths, and and I affirmed those strengths for her. So what are the meaningful features of Pshat? In other words, what makes the ability to see what's there in front of you without projections meaningful? Because we feel it's meaningful when we do that. But why? So we understand, what makes it meaningful. So I thought a lot about this, and I think it boils down to two levels of meaning.
Go back.
Oh, whoops, thank you. Okay, so there's two levels of meaning. First of all, what you don't perceive, you cannot address. Just very obviously, if you see someone walking by quickly and looking down and you think they're purposely ignoring you, when actually they're preoccupied with their own problem, like you won't be able to address what's really going on there. With them, it'll just be self-absorbed. People who are depressed are very, very self-absorbed. Those are people who are the most self-absorbed, but anyone who comes for help of any kind is self-absorbed because they're focused on their problem and how to solve it. They're thinking about themselves.
It could be that, like for instance, during Gush Katif,
Yeah.
I didn't sleep like the whole time.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really me.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was just furious. I wasn't really self-absorbed. I was absorbed with the fact that the government's throwing people out of their house.
Yeah,
Sorry, get rid.
that's right. That's right. No, it's true. But what I'm saying is, you're
General.
focused. You're focused on yourself. In that case that you're describing, you're really focused on someone else.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, when you have a problem that you want to solve, you're necessarily focused on yourself.
Yeah, I wouldn't
You know,
go to
that's what.
therapy for that.
That's what, right. When anyone goes for therapy, I think you can safely assume when anyone goes for therapy, they're focused on themselves. And it's something that they need to solve. I mean, they have to be focused on themselves because they need to solve it. That's why we want to reduce the worry and so forth. But what you don't perceive, you can't address. And Frankel's statement about seeing things was not just about seeing. If you look at your page, it was about, no, I didn't write it on the page. It's about hearing, like hearing how the situation addresses you. He's saying a person addresses you and a situation also addresses you. Like, what does it mean to say that an inanimate situation addresses you, right? But in essence, it's asking you a question. And you are responsible for answering the questions that life is asking you. So what question is life, so to speak, asking you? It's saying, are you paying attention? Are you dropping your projections and your assumptions? Can you see me? Can you really see me as I am? That's what it's asking you. And if you can't answer yes to those things, yes, I see, right, then you won't be able to address it. So you're addressed and you address what's happening. You have to be involved in what's happening. You have to feel like you're not just this observer that has nothing to do with what's confronting you. And you can feel that way if another person is in need. You could feel that way theoretically when something happens. I mean, in Israel, you see somebody on the street who needs help, then everyone immediately rushes to help. Baruch Hashem. But it's not that way everywhere. And you have to feel, the idea of being addressed means you feel involved right away. As soon as something is confronting you, and people do this again. People do this even with their own emotions. Something is confronting them and they don't want to address it. So that's how people get separated from themselves and alienated from themselves, because they don't really want to connect with what they're feeling, so they don't want to address it. So you have to see it first. And the second, on a deeper level, and this is where I'm bringing a little bit of Torah into it, Judaism into it, even though Frankl didn't say it this way. But the situation addressing you is a call to action. It's Hashem, like I said at the beginning, I think, Hashem speaking to you through the situation. It's not only that the situation is speaking to you, and Frankl also spoke about God, he spoke about ultimate meaning. So it's actually, I think that he had this in mind as well, that something is speaking to you through the situation. Something is calling your attention, trying to get your attention. So on a deeper level, that's a deeper meaning of just seeing what is. Okay. Okay, with that, we'll go. Let's read. I need to go back and read number 3, if you could read that one, because that will sum up what we've said already. That's true.
That's true. I'm doing all of this to myself. This is horrible. So why am I here? I wanted to be convinced that the lie is true. Like, for example, my mother-in-law was in the Holocaust, but she thought she suffered enough, and why should she make everyone else suffer? So all she wants to do is make her children happy. So she pretends to be happy so she can make them happy.
Right. So you see here is her reasoning, of why she should believe the lie is true. That, it's a way to make people happy. That's all. But it's really a lie. Okay, so we'll see more of that. The values clarification. 1 second. No, I didn't get there yet. Okay, the second aspect of meaning we'll go on to now is remez. So remez is the hint, right? So it's the feelings and attitudes towards the facts. So what if somebody has a pain? So what if my spouse is angry with me? So what if, if I lost my job? What is the significance of what you're feeling? And that's another aspect of meaning, not just to see what's going on, what's happening in the situation, but there's something meaningful about knowing what your feelings teach you. And very often there's a neglect. We neglect going deeper. It's important to know what your feelings are teaching you, but there's a deeper level also to what value is underlying the feelings. People talk about anger, for example, being that the underlying value is your values have been violated. So your anger tells you your values have been violated. Then you can think, what value was underlying this. But I think that every emotion has values underlying it, not just anger. So we have to think about what those values are. And that's why in logotherapy we have values clarification. We want to help the person clarify what is important to them, what are they passionate about, what do they really, really care about in life? Because the way they're going to get beyond this issue is to find something that they really care about and use that as their anchor. And we'll read what Amy says here. First of all, what I said is, what is it about making pancakes for your grandchildren that's so special? Even taking something like simple like that, because I could see a hint, like you find remez, you find a hint to the person's values through their expression. She got more animated. Her face lit up about that. And so I pursued that further. And what did she say?
As a grandparent, I don't have an agenda. No checklist, just fun.
Right. Okay? And she talked about other things too. She talked about music and writing and how she enjoyed that and all the things that she enjoyed in life. That was helpful to her. Okay. So awareness of why the facts matter to you. Okay. Now, what are the interventions? So first of all, there's Socratic dialogue. One of the main the main workhorse, Elizabeth Lucas, a foremost logotherapist, calls it the workhorse of logotherapy, is Socratic dialogue, where you ask open-ended questions. And anyone who's a therapist knows about the concept of asking open-ended questions to help the person explore further, and to pick up their keywords and to explore an aspect of truth with them. And I think in logotherapy you'll find a little bit more of like waiting for an answer to come from beyond both of you. That's what's a little bit different about logotherapy, where you say, there's an aspect of truth here that you're bringing out, right? So like, let's listen, both of us, to find out what it's about. Why is that important? And what does it mean to you? Like she talked about her idea of not being able to allow herself to be happy. Right? So that was something I needed to pick up on and pursue. What is keeping her from allowing herself to be happy? Those things that she is happy about. What makes her happy about it? So that she can find more satisfaction in those things. Now the other thing is, together with values clarification, is de-reflection. So people think of de-reflection as a distraction technique, because if life is treating you unkindly, you feel, and you distract yourself with something else, right? So you can forget about it momentarily. But de-reflection means you're reflecting away from the problem and onto something that's more important to you than the problem. Right? So it is something you want to think about. So it's not as if you're distracting yourself to take your attention away. It's actually putting your attention onto where you really want to put it. The only trouble is you can't find that value in the situation. But what we want to do is help the person find that value that they care about. It's connecting the dots, really, between what you care about and how you can find it in this situation. It's seeing what you're doing as a value. So what did she do? She took a course, but she said, why am I taking this course? Like, there's no point to it, really. And, I just did it as a distraction to get myself out of bed, because I knew I couldn't just stay in bed all my life. But de-reflection, using the technique of de-reflection, got her to a place of saying, wait a minute, taking this course is really meaningful to me. There's meaning that I'm finding in the course. So we're going to read that. We're going to read that now. So, Eric, read A.
I've been feeling good since last week. What you said stayed with me. There is truth in what can be.
Okay, let me just put the emphasis there. There is truth in what can be, not just what is. Okay.
But
Go
what's
on.
paralyzing me is the frustration over what I don't know. You said an interesting thing, and you said it like you really owned it. You said, you're trying to know things you can't know. I want to deal with what I know. Is there integrity and meaning to what I'm doing? Does it make me feel good? Does it make others happy? Does it serve a purpose? I don't have to take the exams in school, so what am I doing this for? I've learned a lot about the world. It's fun. I'm taking it to a higher level. To write an essay, I have to gather my thoughts, and it will take me higher. I'm being a participant and not an observer of life. In the past, I used to read as an observer, but the literature courses, unknowingly, in the last year, every line is examined closely, and I've been a participant.
Okay, so when I heard her say this, I picked up on what she said, first of all, that she was an observer, and now she's a participant. And that's what happens when you're obsessed with your own problem. You're actually an observer of your own life. But it came out even in her writing, even in her reading. She felt she would read, but she's just an observer. Now, as I said, about being engaged with the reality in front of you, she's become a participant. And that was just amazing because you notice the shift from saying, what's the use of taking these courses really? Okay, it was a distraction, but I'm not going to get anything out of it. And now she's saying, it's taking me higher. And I'm a participant as I'm reading it, and it's giving me so much. So she started to get very enthused. You see the difference between feeling that the course was a distraction and feeling that the course is making her a participant in life. It's changing her attitude towards what she's doing because she sees it as a value and she recognizes that the value she finds in it. So it's changing her whole attitude towards her life. And so I said, I'm in awe by what you're saying. You said that unknowingly, so I picked up on the word unknowingly also because she said that she talked a lot about what she knows and what she doesn't know, right? And she's the kind of person that has to, know things. And so you said that unknowingly you've become a participant. It's interesting that an observer knows it all, because you can see from a faraway stance, right? If you see the whole picture, you know it all. But when you're a participant, you don't see everything, but you see yourself and you see how you're interacting with what's in front of you, right? You see that you're a part of it. Let's go ahead, one more line.
Yes, unknowingly I came to a truth. I get overwhelmed by the big picture. When I look at small things, I'm okay.
Right. So then she got back to looking at the small things. So when you de-reflect, help the person with the technique of de-reflection, it diminishes their self-absorption and depression. Why? Because they're not self-absorbed anymore, because they're focusing on the value that they care about. And that leads to self-transcendence, which is another important concept in logotherapy, where you're able to transcend, to rise above your inertia, transcend literally to rise above, like to rise above your instincts, to be able to choose, make better choices, to rise above your inertia, to rise above the circumstances that life has put you in order to, to take initiative and to do really what you want with your life. So what are the meaningful features of Remez? The first one is values guide, motivate, extricate you from your blocks and your struggles, and promote endurance. They allow you to keep on going when the going gets rough. So values are critically important. And values take you, on a deeper level, values take you to higher human striving. Because it takes you beyond yourself, because you're doing what you're doing for the sake of a person you love or a higher cause, and then you feel that you're part of the greater whole, and you feel you're not just interested in yourself. You're taking the focus away from yourself. And that's the idea of logotherapy. Instead of being focused on the person, it's focused on the meaning. Right? By being focused on the meaning, it really means to say that you're focused outside yourself on something beyond yourself. It's something that you care about. It's not as if you don't care about, but it's beyond you, it's not just your narrow concerns. And in every culture, I think, there's the expression that you have to lose yourself in order to find yourself. And I've found this expressed several different ways. And Frankl is one of the people who said that.
What do you mean by extricate?
To get yourself out of your stuckness.
Oh.
Okay,
Right.
yeah.
Just an example with Amy.
Yeah.
It seems like it was a higher level, but it was all still for her. Meaning
Yes.
she got extricated out of her stuckness,
Yes.
not being so self-absorbed, but the high meaning wasn't necessarily an existential high meaning, it was just very...
That's right. That's what's... I'm glad you pointed that out, because that's what's practical about it, right? It is for her, but it's part of something she cares about that's beyond her problem. It's a value for her. I mean, we all do things that we enjoy doing, but when it's a value for you, right, then that's what turns your life around. I forgot to mention, values tell you whether something is good or bad for you. You're talking about, how it's something that she felt she needed to do. Well, how are you going to know if it's good or bad, if it's dangerous, safe or dangerous, something you're willing or unwilling to do? There's something deep down that we know we want, and this inner awareness, is what allows us to go in the direction we need to go in. And values inspire us, so that we can, so that we can do what we want, and we can take hold of those values even when it's hard to do. So she would go and study and need to sleep afterwards. But she was able to endure and keep going, because she was able to hold on to the value. Maybe if she wouldn't have seen the great value in it, she wouldn't have been able to continue in that way if it's only a distraction. It makes life worth living, makes it worth the sacrifice. So the aim of eliciting the client's own values system is not the therapist imposing the therapist's values. It's eliciting the client's values. And we do that because we believe in the client's ability to find what their values are. And values are almost synonymous with meaning. For Frankl, he talks about finding how the interest in people is to find values and find meanings and to fulfill values, right? So when you fulfill values, that's when you find meaning. So that's why values are a necessary precondition to therapeutic change. Not only are they necessary in therapy, they're a necessary precondition. You can't change without paying attention to values. And because values are absolutely essential, Frankl added that there's a danger. He recognized the danger that the therapist could impose his or her own values. He says, so be careful, that's all. But it's necessary, so you can't avoid it. But just be careful, you're not imposing your values, you're eliciting the client's values. Now, if we juxtapose these two aspects of meaning, what do we find? And I'll sum up here. We found that something out there in the world touches something in here, in us, right? We have a built-in system of values, not just universal values, but the sense that universal value needs to be applied right now at this moment in this way, or for me because of who I am. It's part of an inborn awareness, and I could go into this a lot more in the discussion of conscience and Torah and how logotherapy and Torah fit in that way. But I'll just mention one thing. There's in the book by Rav Volbe, talks about da'at, about intrinsic knowing. How you need to get this wisdom in you. You have this wisdom in you, but you need to get in touch with it, of knowing what's right for you. He calls it uvnata deliba, the understanding of the heart. And he says, even after we have the Torah, we still need understanding of the heart. Right? You need to still you're in this situation, it's you, you have to know who you are as a unique individual, you have to know what's unique about the situation in front of you, and you have to know what's right? So you have to have, you don't have to get it. You do have an inborn awareness, but like I said at the very beginning, that we can lose sight of it, just like we can ignore what's out there. We can also ignore our inner intuition, but it's there, and we can learn to access it. And that's in logotherapy, we're really helping the person learn to see the reality in front of them and learn to access their inner intuition for what it's saying to them, what they need to do with that information. Oh, never mind. That's the end. Okay, so the success of logotherapy is when you can find that commonality between what's happening out there and what you're realizing is important to you, and connect the dots between those two things. On the page where I made the chart, you'll see everything that I've gone through, and I will leave a little bit of time for questions, but I want to, by the way, the other side of this page, you can bring it next week if you come next week. That's when we'll be discussing the case further, and there will be a lot more case material next week to discuss what happens afterwards, because she really underwent an amazing shift, even more than I talked about today, right? So by the last meeting. So I want to hand out these workshops that one is basic life skills, and one is seeing the connection between Torah and logotherapy. And if you're interested in learning more, you can contact me by email, by phone. There's my cards. And if you're interested in the Logotherapy conference in November, it's coming up. If you're interested in telling clients who you think this could be helpful to. So I'm ready for questions at this point. Yeah. You have a question? What's your question? Do you have a question?
I have a question. The de-reflection technique.
Yes.
How did the therapist or yourself in that case?
Yes.
What was the technique of de-reflection that caused it to make that shift? I didn't see that in the.
Right.
Okay.
Well, it came after. There was a certain turn in the conversation, because it came after talking about. I picked up on her talking about her her enjoyment of making pancakes with her grandchildren, and once she got into this positive frame, and she started talking. So it's a sequence. She got into this positive frame. I pick up on the positive. She gets into a positive frame of talking about that, and then then the de-reflection is where I'm helping her explore and expand on those positive experiences and more positive experiences, and how they affect you, and how it relates to what you're actually doing. How she doesn't have to go anywhere else to find that meaning. The meaning is to know that taking her course is meaningful. Right. Yeah. You have a question?
Do you ever find that there are certain people who cannot do this? Like, let's say they're so depressed
Yeah.
that there are clients who do not find a certain sense of meaning?
There's always some kind of sense of meaning, because the question is, what is the situation saying to you? So you always go through those steps. Always go through those steps with them, and eventually leads them there to find some kind of crack, and then open up the crack. And eventually leads them there. I mean, some people will take longer, but
And do you find that even the
Yeah.
little things can be meaningful enough for someone to keep them going?
Well, you see what Amy said, she realized that the small things, when I think small, I don't think so big, the small things become more meaningful. But it also leads a person to realize that there's more they want out of life. And then they'll explore something else. There's somebody who couldn't decide whether she wanted to, continue working or be at home and not work, so it wasn't enough for her to think about the pros and cons. There was a little bit of think about the pros and cons of each one, but the pros and cons of each one had to do with, could she find enough meaning from those little things or not? And so she had to, again, go back to a person's ability to reflect on how they're feeling about it. Why is she feeling that way? Does she feel like she's not worth anything if she's not working? So always asking the person their attitude towards their feelings. Attitude, not just how they're feeling, but their attitude towards the fact that they're feeling that way. What do you think about it, standing from a distance? What do you think about, you're feeling that way? Yeah.
So it's been a really long time since I studied Socratic dialogue.
Yes.
So if you could tell me just in terms of therapy, how is it used? What does it look like?
Okay, so there are questions or comments that the therapist will make based on the need to explore something further, that they need to clarify all of these points. They need to clarify what their misperceptions are, clarify their values, and then de-reflect onto those values. So the kinds of questions or comments you'll make will be to highlight or to try to clarify what they've already said and haven't expressed very fully, or have expressed only weakly, and you want to help them express it more strongly, to find, well, what really is meaningful about this?
I guess what I'm remembering
Yeah.
from Socrates is that
Yes.
he seemed to have some point where he was either disproving what they were saying or something. He had an agenda more. I guess in other words, within logotherapy, the agenda is you're finding meaning and you're trying to construct it from what they're saying. You're grabbing little pieces of what is that right?
That's right, and you challenge, you clarify values, and you also challenge the person about their values. That's an important part of it, because when she said, "I want to believe in the lie," right? So I challenged her and I said, how can you believe in a lie? If you're telling me it's a lie, how do you expect to believe in it, right? So it's that kind of thing also, which is part of Socratic questioning.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
You mentioned that Frankl said, the 600.
Yeah,
God,
yes.
That there's always an objective meaning.
Yes.
But what I was wondering is it? I mean, that's up for philosophical debate, as we saw.
Yes.
I mean, at the very least, can we not say that there's always someone's meaning?
Yes.
Meaning, with that case, the person who wrote the question had their own meaning.
Yes. Yeah.
Even if it kind of connects to an objective meaning. And that case study as well with Amy, it doesn't have to be that there's an objective meaning, a high thing she's reaching out to, or just there's a very pragmatic perception of her own, which she is creating or connecting to.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not the reason I call it objective, Frankl said that the meaning is objective, but it addresses you subjectively, right? So the reason it can be both objective and address you subjectively is because of these two aspects. If you say that the meaning is calling you to action, because if you feel involved, engaged in the situation, how can you hear this without responding? You feel it's addressing you personally. There's something, but it's you find what that objective meaning is because it relates to something that's important for you to hear. It's like you see something and you needed to hear that. And in her case, like she needed to take that course because, see, the value is inside you and beyond you at the same time. It's something beyond you because it's given to you. It's just like your conditions of your life. Tell me if I'm not explaining this clearly enough, but the conditions of your life are given to you. Your values of your inner intuition of knowing what's right for you, when you get down to your depth of knowing what's right for you, is also given to you. So it's objective in a sense, even though it's inside of you. And it's these two givens together that allow you to make the choices that you need to make. So it's so you say, well, there's nothing, just this objective truth. You might think, well, it's subjective because it's me deciding, but it's there for you. And I suppose it's still a leap of faith, because you say, like, well, maybe I'm thrown into this meaningless world, but if you believe. I think it works very well if you believe in divine providence, ashgacha pratit, and you say, like, Hashem is bringing this into my life for a reason, so let me see, like, what has He given me? He's given me all kinds of material possessions, and along with everything else, He's given me this problem to deal with, right? It's like part of the whole picture. And then when you say, together with that, He's given me the ability to recognize what I need to learn from it. Like, I have the wisdom in me, the ability to learn what I need to learn from this.
If you have,
Right.
I'm just, you have to say there's like a client there, and they I suppose that the difference between someone who is confronted with a problem and says, I have something to learn from this, versus someone says, I don't think there's something to learn from this, I just have to get over it, or
Yes.
work through it.
Yes.
Why is the latter not sufficient? Why, meaning, where does, as in the meaning it helps a person to cope,
Right.
but in terms of, let's say I just feel like there is no meaning to it, it's here, and I've got to deal with it.
I'll tell you why, because of the idea of the past, present, and future, and the purpose in life. Because when somebody, I can think of an example right now of somebody that I know has a lot of family issues going on and struggles, and she really enjoys music, and she's like feeling like, well, why was I given this inborn pull towards this? Like, why? And then she started to express her problems through her music, and she said, "Oh, well, that's now it's all coming together." Like that. Now I know what it's for. Now I know why I was given that inner pull towards music, because I was able to express, and would be very different from saying, okay, well, one way to express your challenges that you're having, why don't you like put it to music? And it wouldn't have the same feeling of satisfaction of like, wow, now I can connect the dots of my life, understanding like this problem and this, this passion, and I can put it all together and see how it's all part of who I am. It's all part of who I am. So the problem is not just like, there's a problem exists outside of me, and by accident I got this problem. It really shouldn't be, and let me just like get through it and get over it. And instead you're saying, this is part of who I am, my uniqueness, and my mission in life. Who I'm meant to be. I'm already going on to next week, but this is part of who I'm meant to be. So that's a very. It gives people. I can see that it gives people a very different feeling about themselves.